How you doing out there? First, let me welcome you to the 2020 Healthy Start Drive-Through Baby Shower. My name is Pernell Bush. I'm the Executive Director of No Limit Health and Education and a mental health professional. So I'm here to talk with you all today about stressors throughout the pregnancy stages, and also want to really, I'm directing my conversation towards the fathers. I recall when I first found out about my daughter's about to be born. As a young man, I had no idea of what the challenges I may face, of how I was going to end up providing for this young lady. Once I found out I was having a little girl, and it was so much that was going through me internally, and so many fears and stressors that I thought I had to have all the answers right then and there. But I want to let you guys know that this is a journey. This is a process. And you may not get everything right in the beginning. But there's only one thing I do want you to try to get right from the beginning, and it's showing your emotional capacity to be there for both your child and your co-parent. That's one thing that we can control. We can control the way that we interact with our baby when they first are born, how we hold them, how we attempt to soothe them. And one thing I want to stress this very importantly, guys. The way that co-parents may interact with children and the way that children may interact with their co-parent, with the different co-parents, is going to be very unique. So for my fathers, I want you to remember these things. At times, it may seem as if the child may lean more towards their father, the mother, and it may lean more towards being able to be soothed easier. So you start to question yourself, what's wrong with me? There's nothing wrong with you. That child is going to develop a bond with you and going to start to get soothed by you in a different capacity. So that's the first thing I want us to remember right there. The most important thing that we can do throughout this whole journey, from conception, throughout pregnancy, through delivery, and throughout all the developmental stages of life, is understanding the best thing we can do as fathers is be emotionally prepared. That's understanding having patience, anger management, and have stress relieving tools that we can go about. Everything else, it's almost gonna be trial and error per se. I didn't come with all the tools. I got better over time when it came to parenting. I remember the first time I attempted to change my daughter a diaper. And I was like, yo, how do I wipe? Back to front, front to back. And I had to call. I called people like, hey, listen, she just used the bathroom. Should I wipe it up, wipe back? They're like, and everyone said, no. You learn how to wipe front to back. So at first I was embarrassed because I should know these things. But I want to tell you guys, there's no embarrassment in parenting. In order for us to be the best parents that we can be, we have to be okay with reaching out for assistance. We have to be okay sometimes with hearing those who have been in our positions before. Now, we may not always take the advice that they give us, but the more knowledge that we have, the more ways we know about going through certain situations and how to encounter these things. So I really want to talk about stress, guys, and how to combat that, how to manage it throughout these stages, okay? So in the mental health world, we talk about stress at 3 different levels. We talk about positive stress, tolerable stress, and toxic stress. So that's positive, tolerable, and toxic. So we're going to go through each one of those, what they may look like, and give an example how you may experience each one of those throughout this journey. So positive stress, a lot of times it's like, hey, probably when you first found out that you was going to have a child, it's like, wow, oh my God, we're going to have a kid. It was stressful, but it's like a positive type stress in that moment. Tolerable stress is when now it's like, oh, how am I going to finance this? Like your thought process is all going, how am I going to pay for this? How am I going to, and a lot of times we as men, and I want to address this, we as men, we limit our roles to pure providers, financial providers. And our role is much larger than that in the parenting world. I'm not trying to intimidate you. I just want you to remember that we're more than the dollar signs. But that's a whole nother conversation. I digress. But that tolerable stress is that thinking about how am I going to finance this? How am I going to make sure this baby is taken care of? I'm able to provide for them. And then toxic stress is that level of always worrying if I'm doing this right, or this is what does this have, what did this happen, and you're never able to bring yourself back down. So I want us to really talk about how to stay present in the moment, how to ensure that, hey, we're doing everything we can to work hand in hand with our co-parent, that we feel like we're a part of the process. Because oftentimes when I work with fathers, they feel like I'm not a part of the pregnancy. I feel like I'm missing out. I feel like my co-parent is bonding more because I don't know what to do during this process. We have to intentionally and actively involve ourselves in this process. Okay? So let's talk about some ways to combat that stress and to really be prepared for the things that we may encounter. Okay? So first and foremost, I want you to, we got to start to recognize when we are stressed. Okay? And that's called self-awareness, knowledge of self. So we have to recognize these stages. We have to recognize what it is that we're feeling and why we're feeling this. Am I stressed out because I feel as if, well, I don't know if I'm going to be a good father. So, one way we can combat that is that, hey, let's write down, what is my ideal of a good father? One thing that I did, well, when I found out about my daughter, and then once I found out I had a son, I just had a brand new son last year as well. I sat down and wrote out what type of father I wanted to be. Who are my father role models? Who could I model this next journey of my life after? Just like when I played football, Ray Lewis is the linebacker I wanted to be like. So when I was looking at becoming a father, I'm like, well, I want to take a little bit of this father. I like how this father was. Even some of my friends' fathers. My father, my godfather. And I'm not going to lie, I'm a big My Wife and Kids fan. Michael Kyle was a great fictional father to me. So I started to write that. I was like, okay, why is that? Why am I stressed out about this? How can I be involved from conception? So I wrote down, I want to go to as many doctor appointments that I can. I want to help my co-parent when she may be in distressful moments and just be there to help her work through it. Even just talking with her for a moment. And asking, hey, in this moment, what can I do for you? Because sometimes we overstep, just anyone, not just fathers, but anyone can overstep because we don't know exactly what that individual may want or need. So I learned to ask that question, how can I be here in this moment with you to create a more healthy, positive space for you? And sometimes the answer I receive is like, well, just leave me alone. Hey, okay. But I was meeting what I want to write down as a father because I say I was actively and I was intentionally being a part of this process. We are a father before the child is born. So before, even during the pregnancy, although we don't feel as men, we don't get the experience that mothers have. We are still have to, once again, be a part of this process to the best of our ability. Next, I want to talk about how to do things that's relaxing to you. You have to figure out healthy ways to relax yourself throughout this process. Sometimes for myself, it was really get with my homeboys to sit down and have a conversation with my friends and have a little vent session, man, and we just talk about it as a constructive. And I have good friends who will call me out like, yo, you in the wrong right now. You need to really think about it from her perspective, or maybe try XYZ. Or just for me, I love going to the weight room. I like picking up heavy things and putting them down. But I needed things to do to help me relax and be okay with the process that we were in. Understanding like, hey, I can only do so much. I can only do what I'm physically able to do, especially throughout the pregnancy. I can only do as much as that my co-parent would say, hey, well, I need help here. When she give me doctor dates, if I was able to get off work to go to the doctors. And I learned to be content with that. I learned to be okay with where I was throughout this process. And I did things to allow me to relax when I started to get myself overwhelmed, especially when it came to finances. So I'm like, wow, how am I going to do this? I remember when I sat down with a good friend of mine who was, to me, financially savvy. So we sat down. He helped me break down. Hey man, listen, this is how much you're making. Maybe you want to think about putting this percentage, this much of a percentage aside. And I know a lot of times everyone not able to do that. But I started putting, I'm not gonna lie, I started putting aside $10, $15 each week. Anytime I got a little extra money, I just put it to the side because I'm like, man, everybody's how expensive diapers are, formula. You know, I was looking at ways that we can get baby materials for the room. I was been okay with looking at other ways that it was more cost effective for me to go about these things. And understand it wasn't about the amount of money I spent on an object. It was about me being able to ensure that the child had everything that they need, no matter if it was brand new or not. Combating distress throughout the pregnancy stage, throughout the delivery stage and all, it was an active journey. And that's what I'm trying to stress with you here. Each day I had to do a check-in with myself. It's never going to be, it never came a time to where I'm like, hey, I was just good to go. So, as I said, recognize when you are stressed, have ways to relax yourself. Then I want you to talk about, let's be empathetic to our co-parent. Yes, we don't get the opportunity to go through the physical growth and growth that our mothers go through and the bonding that they get to go through with the child. But also have to be empathetic when they are experiencing things that sometimes it may like, well, why should I care? No, we should. Attempt to put yourself in that individual's shoes. Understand what they're saying. Hear them. Even if you don't agree. Empathy is the ability to place yourself in someone else's shoes. I mean, for just to keep the definition kind of black and white here. Imagine what it feels like to have morning sickness. So what I know I had to do, I had to think about the time I know when I get sick, I'm like a big baby myself. So I had to realize, like, when my co-parent was going through those having nausea and those moments of sickness, that what she was truly experiencing. The fear that she was going through for carrying this child. So I allowed myself to really feel what she was speaking of. Not just hear, but I was trying to feel it. So empathy is going to be a major role throughout the pregnancy and once the child is here. Sometimes we may not agree with our co-parent, but we can always attempt to feel where they're coming from, whether we agree or not. So with empathy, lastly but not least, listen to your co-parent. Before we can do anything, before we can try to comprehend, before we try to communicate, we have to listen. And vice versa. I want you guys to create an environment that both co-parents feel okay enough to come to one another. Knowing that that parent may listen. Knowing that that parent may need to take some different times to comprehend it. And then we actually have a healthy communication. Oftentimes I get people to come to me for communication, like we're having issues communicating. And I always start back to the listening and comprehending first. And then how we process that. So we have to get to a place with our co-parent to where that the way that we may communicate may look different than how XYZ communicate over here. Even now, when I communicate with my significant other, she knows after she talks with me about something, I need a moment to process. I may not be able to go right back with you in that very moment how she may want it. So I'm like, hey, listen, I hear what you're saying. Right now, I need time. Give me an opportunity, at least a couple of hours, or I'll come back. I give a time frame that I may come back that we can actually address this after I have allowed this information to process to ensure I'm comprehending what you're saying, and I'm not just responding just to respond to soothe you in this moment, or respond just to have you be quiet. No, I want to ensure that I want to respond from a very heartfelt place, so that the way that we communicate is completely different than what other couples may communicate. So listening. So when I say listen, I'm talking about listen, comprehend, and communicate. Okay? So when I'm talking about communicate, I'm talking about verbal communication. So it looks a lot different. But these are all ways that we can combat stress. These are all ways that we can start to really be involved and be a part of this whole parenting journey. But for my fathers, I want to let you guys know, as it stated, broken crayons still do color. And when I hear that, what I hear is that although I may make a mistake here, may make a mistake there, I may not be perfect here, I may not have it all together there, but I still have an opportunity to recover and always have an opportunity to improve myself. And although I may not always have it all together and I may be a broken crayon, I'm still able to color and be a part of this picture to make a beautiful picture for my child in the life that I want them to have when they are adults. You know, I do parenting workshops to where I always ask this question to my parents. What are you pouring into your children? And when I ask that question, I often have them think about their child at the age of 25. So I want you to imagine this for a moment. Think about this child, who you want this child to be at 25, their character, their morals, their values, and then work backwards to think, how are you going to pour into them? How are you going to help guide them to become this individual? And once again, I say guide, because parenting journey is going to be an interesting one. We're going to do the best that we can as individuals. But understand that this little person is still going to be an individual of free will. And although we need to provide structure, we need to provide boundaries, we need to provide guidance, skills, tools, education, techniques. Once this is a young baby that we're having reach a certain age, they're going to start developing to their own personalities, into their own human beings. So a lot of the things that we may attempt to do, because please believe I know, I have a 9-year-old right now, and I'm like, wait a minute, where did this come from? What we have to do as parents is guide them, even during those tough moments, even when it seems like they're not listening. And I tell parents, the moment the children are not listening, that's really when they truly are. And then also remember, the things that majority of children do, they're going to mimic what they see. So think about that. Not only are they going to listen to you, but they're going to mimic what they see. So what behaviors do you have that you want them to hopefully model? Or what new habits could you possibly potentially pick up that they can also potentially model one day? I'm just happy that I was able to be here with you all today. So before I close, like I said, this whole thing was about how to combat stress. So I want to go back down the list. Recognize when you are stressed. And when you recognize when you are stressed, let's try to pinpoint where is it coming from. Like I said, a lot of times I utilize writing as an opportunity to look. Because if I'm stressed out about something, I'm like, well, where is this coming from? And I'm able to write it out and I'm able to pinpoint it. And then I'm able to utilize that to try to minimize that stress level. Do something that's relaxing. It's okay. You're still an individual, so you have to do things that's relaxing. So whether it be finding a support group with friends or hanging out, I know the new PS5 coming out. Do something that's relaxing, but also be very mindful about the time that you utilize doing that. It's 168 hours in a week. So sometimes when you take a couple of hours for that self-care, it's okay. Be empathetic. Empathy, to me, is the most powerful thing that we have as human beings. So be empathetic. Listen to your co-parent. So as I broke down, when I say listen to your co-parent, not only are we listening, but we're attempting to comprehend so we can verbally communicate. And that may look different for each one of you all, for each couple. So I want you to sit down with your co-parent, be like, hey, listen, in order for us to communicate in a healthy way, this is the way that I see it happening. And vice versa, hear them, and you guys come to a good compromise about how we can possibly come to a healthy communication standpoint from listening, comprehending, and verbally communicating. So we're going to continue to work through this, guys, together. Once again, I'm Pernell Bush, the Executive Director of No Limit Health and Education, and also a mental health therapist. You can find me on Psychology Today under Pernell Bush. And I look forward to hopefully meeting some of you all in the future. And once again, happy baby shower, and thank you for joining us.